Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into an intense and fast-moving development that has sent shockwaves through global politics. Reports are circulating that former U.S. President Donald Trump has declared Venezuela's airspace closed, following what he described as chilling land, strike warnings, and escalating military tensions. This situation has sparked debates, raised alarms, and triggered strong reactions from governments and analysts around the world. In this video, we will break down what led to this moment, why the declaration matters, what it could mean for the region, and how different actors are responding behind the scenes. The statement has immediately generated global attention. Whenever a major political figure uses language like closed airspace, it carries heavy implications, suggesting potential military restrictions, heightened alert levels, or strategic preparation. People are questioning whether this is symbolic pressure, political signaling, or a warning hinting at something larger developing beneath the surface. Many observers believe that such declarations rarely come without deeper intentions, and this one is no exception. Tensions between the United States and Venezuela have a long history marked by sanctions, diplomatic clashes, and competing narratives about security, democracy, and influence in Latin America. The current claim of airspace being closed adds a new layer to this already complicated relationship. Supporters say this could be an attempt to pressure the Venezuelan leadership and prevent potential airborne operations that might threaten regional security. Critics argue that such statements risk provoking unnecessary escalation. Venezuela has responded sharply, calling the claim provocative and dismissing it as political theatrics. Venezuelan officials insist that their airspace remains fully operational and under their sovereign control. They accuse outside actors of trying to create fear, confusion, or justification for intervention. Their response has emphasized national pride, and state media has portrayed the declaration as a sign of foreign hostility rather than legitimate security concern. This is not the first time that discourse around restricted airspace has appeared in geopolitical conflicts. When a leader uses this kind of language, it often signals an attempt to reshape the strategic environment. Airspace is a crucial element of national defense, and any conversation about closing it naturally raises questions about surveillance, military readiness, and possible future action. Observers are watching closely for troop movements, satellite data, radar activity, or shifts in diplomatic messaging that might indicate additional steps. Many analysts believe this declaration aligns with the broader pattern of assertive rhetoric that emerges during periods of heightened tension. Trump has frequently used bold language to highlight threats, pressure adversaries, or rally supporters. By framing the situation as an imminent land strike risk, he may be signaling a belief that Venezuela's current military posture or alliances present a potential security challenge. Whether that assessment is grounded in intelligence or political positioning remains uncertain, but the message has reverberated widely. Airspace disputes often trigger discussions at international organizations. Countries tend to seek diplomatic forums to challenge or justify claims related to aerial sovereignty. If this situation escalates further, it could prompt emergency meetings, resolutions, or calls for clarification. Neighboring nations are particularly concerned since any conflict or disruption in Venezuelan skies could spill into surrounding territories, impacting civilian flights, trade routes, and regional stability. The phrase chilling land strikes has become the center of intense speculation. Some believe it refers to warnings of potential attacks from Venezuelan forces or allied groups. Others interpret it as a description of intelligence suggesting that certain military capabilities are being expanded or repositioned. In geopolitics, phrases like these are often intentionally vague. They create urgency without revealing specifics, leaving the public guessing while governments quietly evaluate their strategies. For Venezuelans, the situation adds another layer of stress to an already challenging landscape. The country has endured years of economic crisis, political division, and international pressure. Any sign of military escalation heightens fear, especially among civilians living near borders, military bases, or strategic infrastructure. Many citizens worry about disruptions to daily life, potential sanctions, or the possibility of air travel restrictions that could isolate the nation further. Political commentators in the United States have quickly split into camps. Some argue that Trump's declaration is a warning meant to deter hostile activity. Others believe it could inflame tensions unnecessarily. Television debates, social media reactions, and analyst commentary have turned this event into a major talking point as people question the validity and consequences of the claim. Some supporters view the declaration as a stand for security, while opponents frame it as reckless messaging. International governments are also reacting cautiously. Countries with strategic interests in Latin America, such as Russia, China, and regional blocs, are analyzing the statement carefully. Any shift in Venezuela's status or potential military confrontation could alter alliances, trade relations, and access to natural resources. Venezuela's oil reserves make it a significant player despite its internal struggles, and powerful nations are unlikely to ignore developments involving its territory. Airlines are monitoring the situation closely. Commercial flight routes depend heavily on stable and predictable airspace access. Even a rumor of restrictions can cause carriers to adjust paths or increase surveillance. If geopolitical uncertainty rises, airlines might reroute flights to avoid potential risk zones. This can lead to longer travel times, increased operating costs, and disruptions for passengers traveling through South America. Military analysts are scrutinizing radar data, satellite imagery, and troop positions to determine whether any physical escalation has occurred. So far, the situation appears to be primarily rhetorical, but experts caution that rhetoric can sometimes precede action. Tensions can escalate rapidly when communication breaks down or when a country feels cornered. Both the United States and Venezuela possess the ability to escalate quickly if they perceive threats to national security. Another factor shaping this situation is the domestic political landscape in the U.S. Strong statements on foreign policy often resonate with certain voter groups. By presenting himself as someone willing to take bold steps against governments he considers dangerous, Trump may be reinforcing a particular narrative that appeals to his base. Political timing often influences how statements are crafted and delivered, especially when global events become tools for shaping internal messaging. Meanwhile, Venezuelan leadership is leveraging the situation to reinforce national unity. They frame external declarations as attempts to undermine sovereignty, using them to strengthen internal narratives. State-backed media outlets are broadcasting messages of resilience and condemning what they describe as foreign interference. This kind of messaging helps leaders rally supporters and shift public attention away from internal issues. Social media has amplified the situation dramatically. Posts, videos, analyses, and reactions are spreading at high speed, with many users taking firm stances despite limited information. Some accounts share dramatic interpretations of what airspace closed means, while others try to debunk exaggerated claims. In today's digital environment, narratives spread faster than official clarifications, often shaping public perception long before factual reports emerge. Regional organizations are particularly concerned about overall stability. Latin America has experienced decades of political turbulence, and any sign of military escalation can trigger concerns about migration, economic shocks, and humanitarian pressures. Countries in the region prefer diplomatic resolution rather than confrontation, as any conflict could strain already fragile systems. Experts warn that the language used in such declarations matters significantly. Words like closed, strikes, and warnings create an atmosphere of crisis even when no military action has occurred. Governments must be careful when issuing or responding to such statements because misinterpretation can lead to unintended consequences. Diplomacy often hinges on tone as much as substance. Behind the public statements, there are likely back-channel communications taking place. Diplomatic channels, intelligence agencies, and military officials typically seek clarity away from the spotlight. These conversations help prevent misunderstandings and ensure that each side understands the other's intentions. It's possible that major nations are quietly requesting explanations, urging calm, or assessing the potential fallout. Economists are also monitoring the situation because geopolitical tension can influence global markets, especially energy prices. Venezuela, despite its challenges, still plays a role in global oil supply dynamics. Any sign of conflict or instability can affect investor confidence, trigger price fluctuations, and add volatility to financial markets. Analysts are watching closely for signals that traders might react to. Some observers believe this declaration is part of a broader narrative involving global power competition. Venezuela has established relationships with nations that are often in strategic opposition to U.S. interests. Any shift in Venezuela's status or alignment can influence the balance of power in the region. Thus, strong statements about Venezuela's military capability or intentions naturally draw international attention. There is also the humanitarian dimension. Venezuela's population has endured shortages, inflation, and mass migration over the past decade. Any escalation could worsen humanitarian conditions, disrupt aid efforts, or push more citizens to flee. Organizations operating in the region have expressed concern that heightened tensions might limit their ability to deliver resources or access vulnerable communities. The situation also raises legal questions. International law governs airspace rights, sovereignty, and military conduct. Declarations made by individuals who are not in formal office may not have legal authority, but they can still influence diplomatic behavior. Governments must consider how to respond without legitimizing or escalating claims that fall outside established legal frameworks. Civil society groups in both countries are reacting with concern. Activists in the U.S. worry about the potential for foreign conflict, while activists in Venezuela fear further isolation or external pressure. These groups often call for dialogue, transparency, and restraint, hoping to avoid outcomes that could harm civilians or destabilize the region further. A significant part of this story is the uncertainty around what triggered the declaration. Without detailed evidence or official documentation, the public is left relying on statements, speculation, and media interpretation. This lack of clarity fuels debate and creates confusion. Analysts advise caution, emphasizing that the situation must be monitored carefully until verified information becomes available. The international community is expected to encourage diplomatic engagement. Usually, when such statements emerge, other governments privately contact both sides to encourage restraint and prevent escalation. Maintaining stable relations in Latin America is a priority for many nations due to economic connections, security concerns, and regional integration. Looking forward, the key questions revolve around what happens next. Will more statements be issued? Will official institutions clarify the situation? Will there be movement on the ground that supports or contradicts the rhetoric? These unknowns create an atmosphere of tension that can either dissolve quickly or intensify depending on what unfolds. Observers highlight that geopolitical rhetoric often comes in cycles. A bold statement triggers responses, and then the situation gradually softens as diplomacy takes over. But there are also times when a single statement marks the beginning of a more confrontational phase. At this point, it is too early to know which direction this situation will take. Many people across the region hope that this moment becomes a turning point toward dialogue rather than conflict. The last thing the world needs is another area of instability, especially at a time when global tensions are already elevated in several regions. De-escalation, communication, and caution are essential to prevent misunderstandings. For now, the declaration continues to spread across global news cycles, generating a mix of concern, skepticism, and speculation. What remains clear is that the world is watching closely. Whether this becomes a brief moment of political theater or a trigger for deeper conflict depends on the actions and decisions made in the coming days. As developments continue to unfold, it will be important to stay informed, analyze information carefully, and avoid jumping to conclusions based on rhetoric alone. The situation is dynamic, and clarity will emerge as more details come to light. Until then, the world waits to see how leaders, governments, and institutions respond, and whether diplomacy can prevail.